So this is the second part to the accreditation video where we're going to involve, where I will cover more about the actual process itself and the relationship between institutions and their regional accrediting agency. So there are 5 different types of reviews. There's candidacy, which a brand new institution applies for candidacy, and they have regular communication with the accrediting agency, and they participate in a process that at the end of 2 years, if they have been deemed as satisfactory or compliant, then they become an initial member. And so, but it's a process of 2 years. Those of you that are from the area probably remember the Paducah School of Law. Well, the Paducah School of Law applied for accreditation and also bar recognition and was unable to satisfy the compliance. And so therefore, since they couldn't satisfy the compliance process, they were never able to give federal financial aid, and as a result of that, they could no longer operate. So this is really essential in terms of your long-term ability to sustain your institution. So you apply for candidacy. It's a 2-year process, and after the 2 years is over with, you will receive what's called a compliance certification. Every accrediting agency offers one of these, but it's an compliance certification. And it's a very long list of items, but basically if you are deemed compliant by the accrediting agency, you keep this on file. And between your review, whether it be a 6-year review or a 10-year review, you present this as part of the documents that you present to show formally, yes, we are accredited through this particular accrediting agency. And so you receive an initial membership, and if you're a part of SACS, you get on the 5th year, you get a QEP visit. Otherwise, from that point on, you continue to apply for reaffirmation or continued accreditation. And again, depending on the agency, it's every 6 to 10 years, depending on which. If it's part of SACS, you have to do a QEP, which I'd said earlier in the earlier video, there is a variety of different standards that each accrediting agency seems as sufficient in measuring quality of education that the institution provides. Well, QEP focuses specifically on student learning, which isn't necessarily covered in the other standings. So that's what makes SACS COC unique, is that it's a decennial process, meaning that you apply for accreditation or reaffirmation every 10 years, but halfway through it, you do a QEP that's focused exclusively on student learning. And that gets the entire campus involved. It basically, offices and academic programs are asked to identify how they contribute to the QEP, and you keep records of it. So that's something unique. And I've had an opportunity to participate in both reporting for the QEP when I was director of advising, as well as implementing some of the strategies. Now, the last 2 are not part of the formal process. So if those are unique situations. So if there is something that has changed substantially with the institution, then there's an evaluation of institutional circumstance that would affect accreditation. And then there's also substantive change review, which if there has you have received some sanction, then you need to complete a process to demonstrate that you have overcome that compliance sanction. Now, it doesn't matter what regional accrediting agency you operate through, there's really a 4-step process that everyone participates in, every institution participates in. Self-study, peer review, site visit, and then the judgment. Now, the first one, self-study, is not required from an accrediting agency. It is highly recommended, but it's not required. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment. The important thing to keep in mind is that you don't have to pursue regional accreditation alone. Every accrediting agency provides you with a manual. And so here's an example of a manual that the SACS Association provides institutions. You can get it online, called the Principles of Accreditation, Foundations for Quality Enhancement. So every so many years, they'll revise this and put this out. And if you read it, it's a very long read, but if you read it, you will understand what standards you need to be prepared for. You'll understand the process, components of the review process. So it's a very important document. And if you are identified as your institution on your institution's accreditation team, and maybe even the liaison for your accreditation team with SACS, then you're going to be expected to know this manual backwards and forwards to help you through this process. So the first piece is the self-study. Again, it's not required, but institutions must participate in this, or are encouraged to participate in this, so that when it is time for the accreditation review, you have, as they say, dotted the I's and crossed the T's. And so it's a summary of how well you are performing with the accreditor's standards. And again, each regional accrediting agency operates off different set of standards, and you're expected, there's, some look at more than others, but this is what your internal steering committee does. And it's about a 12-month process. You're involving faculty and staff and head administrators. You're involving community leaders, people in the workforce, alumni, students in this particular process. And it's a great way to prepare your institution for what will come down the road, which will be an on-site visit. Institutions will often hire external reviewers. So later in your all's career, if you get an opportunity to participate in this accreditation process, you can always serve as an external reviewer, make some supplemental income, and just help institutions prepare for their accreditation review. An excellent video out there I have marked. I would encourage you to look at it. It's not long, but it gives you an idea about an institution's process through the self-study. One of the questions I want you to pause the video and think about: why do you need a self-study? Why is it important to participate in this? Next piece of this process is the peer review. And so your accrediting agency will assign a committee of 3 practitioners that have a familiarity for your type of institution. So if it's a community college, it might be a track A. If it's a 4-year, maybe a track B, and then there's certain levels within that. But they'll assign practitioners that are familiar with your institutional type. And basically, they will ask for documents 6 months before their on-site visit that address those standards. Now, they're going to be looking for key details that are all listed in that manual that I had shown you earlier, and to see if your institution is compliant. If they find questions or need additional information or have concerns, they're going to be looking for those in that next step, which is the site visit, the on-site visit. It's typically about 3 or 4 days. You will usually use the same team that reviewed your institution in the peer review, and they will meet with faculty, staff, administrators. They'll stop students even out in the hall and ask them questions that are pertinent to the review in those standards. The last day that they're there, they will provide you with a report and basically addressing areas for which you're compliant and possibly areas for which you're non-compliant. The institution will have an opportunity to review that report and maybe correct any kind of factual information, but they can't argue with the result of non-compliance. Lastly, there's a judgment. So accrediting agencies maybe will meet once a year or maybe twice a year. SACS COC meets in June and in December, and they will based off of the peer review and the site visit, the committee will recommend a decision. And so the SAC or the accrediting agency board will make the final decision. And those are a few of the examples. Institutions are always striving for reaffirmation. Anything else adds to time and cost, and if it's not corrected, the penalty will continue to grow in its level of severity. Also, institutions, they want to have a good review, and the reason why is that on the SACS website, it's public information if an institution has failed to, we'll look at the most recent here, has failed to meet accreditation standards. And so a public statement will be issued for that institution. And the statement will tell you what it means to be denied reaffirmation, why the specific university was given this particular judgment, and then when it will be reviewed again. And so institutions have time to correct. And so it's likely that your institution, if it's found non-compliant in one or more areas, it's likely your institution will be given time and can still offer federal financial aid and transfer credits in the meantime. However, you need to get those areas of noncompliance under control and rectified. Because I've noticed, I see institutions that have these public statements, and if they don't get it fixed or they're in an area of disarray at their institution, those particular areas of noncompliance just grow, because one will affect another that will affect another. So I hope you found this video interesting. I know it was an overview of the accreditation process itself, but if you work at an institution, I highly encourage you to be involved in this process. It is a great career booster, and every institution has to participate, and not everyone wants to be involved in this. It's a lot of technical writing. There's a lot of teamwork and a lot of collaboration that goes into it. But it is a necessity for institutions in order for them to have longevity in terms of their mission and their outcome.